I'm Head of Teaching in the School of Biochemistry, and I'd like to describe for you how I went about mapping the programme learning outcomes for our biochemistry programmes onto the learning outcomes for the individual mandatory units for our programme. Now, the biochemistry programme is made up of a number of mandatory units in each of the years, and I think the easiest way for me to describe what I did is to talk you through how I went about mapping the learning outcomes for the first year unit, which is called the Biochemistry 1G unit, and how I mapped those learning outcomes onto the programme learning outcomes which are available in the programme specifications. The whole reason why we undertook this mapping exercise is in response to the 2009 visitation institutional audit by the QAA, and they wanted the University of Bristol to identify how the learning outcomes for programmes could map onto the learning outcomes for the individual units of those programmes, and also to look at how those learning outcomes were actually assessed for the individual units. Here we have the programme specification for the BSc in biochemistry. I'm sure you're all familiar with what a programme specification actually looks like, and you'll know that within the programme specification there's a section on programme outcomes. Within the programme outcomes, the section is broken down into the knowledge and understanding that the students gain throughout the programme, the intellectual skills and attributes, and finally the other skills and attributes that they might gain. These are things such as practical skills and transferable skills. This document here shows the actual mapping exercise I undertook for the biochemistry programmes, mapping the learning outcomes from the programme specifications shown here. These are the first learning outcomes in the programme specifications dealing with the knowledge and understanding that students gain. And over here on the right, dealing with where in the programme they actually gain these skills and how they're assessed. So, for example, if we look at the knowledge and understanding of the structure and function of proteins and other macromolecules, we are assessing these in year one through what's shown in this box here, which is essentially unseen written exams consisting of essays and multiple choice questions. So having looked at how and where the students pick up knowledge and understanding of the subject matter throughout the biochemistry programme, I then went on and mapped the other sections of the programme outcomes, such as the intellectual skills and attributes, and tried to show where the students were actually picking up these skills. So, for example, if we look at the ability to demonstrate a competence in a wide range of modern biochemical techniques, we are instructing the students on these in years one, and they are assessed through practical write-ups. So this shows you, hopefully pretty straightforwardly, how easy it is to map the individual skills that are within the programme outcomes onto the assessments that we have within the programme. So in the first phase of the mapping exercise, I took the programme learning outcomes and showed exactly where and when they were assessed within the programme. In the second phase of the mapping exercise, I looked at the learning outcomes for the individual mandatory components of the programme, which are shown here for the first year. So what I'm showing is the learning outcomes for what's called the Biochemistry 1G unit, and this is a mandatory unit in the first year. And I'm showing the learning outcomes here in terms of the knowledge and understanding that the students gain, the skills that the students gain, and finally the attitudes that the students gain throughout the unit. And I've mapped those here, you can see, onto the programme specification learning outcomes. So A 1 to 8 represents the learning outcomes that were in the programme specifications. And I've shown how they're actually assessed within the programme. So, for example, these subject-specific knowledge learning outcomes are assessed through tutorial work, which is formative work, but also through summative exams, through MCQs, calculations and essays. So what I've shown you is how I mapped the programme learning outcomes onto the learning outcomes for the unit in year one that's mandatory for our programme, which is Biochemistry 1G. Now, of course, I've also done that for the units in years 2 and 3. And when I did this, it took me about an afternoon. So it's really an easily achievable goal for all of the programmes here at Bristol. And hopefully if we do this, we'll actually go some way to answering the recommendations of the QAA.